Welcome back, everybody. Once again, we have another amazing special guest. Honestly, a legend in our comic book industry. Welcome to the show, Darick Robertson, everybody.
Hey, Derek.
Hey.
We usually drawer of or illustrator for all this stuff. But I mean, if you don't know Darick Robertson, listening to the 200th episode of Fortress of Comic News, I don't know what you're doing listening to our podcast, but welcome, dude. It's awesome. It's, we get some guests that it's like, man, pinch me, and this is one of them. So I'm really glad you could be here today. So thanks for that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about some boy stuff and some Hellblazer, some Space Bastards. But usually when we start the show, we want to talk about a little bit of the origin stories. I know you've done that a lot. So let's just talk about your style of art. I mean, when you see your art, it's Darick Robertson. Maybe talk about like where your influence came from, what got you to that point of what do you enjoy looking at today or something. But
I grew up loving Neil Adams and Ross Andrew and those more literal styles. I find them, and so for me, I taught myself to draw. I haven't had any formal education. It's just relentless, like compulsion and then practice that comes from it. But when I was a kid, I knew I wanted to draw comics from a very young age. I didn't even realize I could do it professionally when I first fell in love with it. It was just, I would staple typing paper together and make my own comics out of that, like with the logos and and I even got to the point where I was like drawing parody ads in the middle of it, and I made my own characters, and that's where it started. And then as I got older, I started to recognize the names and started to see this guy draws differently than that guy draws. And but when I was a child, it was just all one big lump. The only artist I really knew was Charles Schultz. And the mistakenly thought that Walt Disney drew everything.
He didn't? What do you mean?
No. Just to put his name on it.
Yeah. And what do you say? I mean, you didn't have any formal education, so was it just kind of developing your own process over the years of like,
just doing it badly enough until it started to look good, It's like,
right.
My early drawings look like everybody's early drawings. It's just, I think if I have any real talent, it's just that I had tenacity and patience to just, suffer through terrible looking work, it's like, I can do better the next time, That's what I always felt. It just, every once in a while something would click and I'd go, wait, I'm getting it. This is better than that, But it's like, there's an old saying that success is determined about how much uncertainty you can deal with.
That's interesting. Damn. Life lessons today.
This all sounds an awful lot like my writing style. It was just really shit for the longest time, and then one day I'm just like, oh, this is kind of good.
Yeah, it makes a big difference.
It's kind of good, and then it got funded on Kickstarter or something.
Yeah. So,
So do you think, would you say now you're still learning and improving upon?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that's one of the most. That's the joy of art and music. I also play music just I'm an amateur, but I mean, I do it for fun as a hobby.
Yep.
But the more you do it, the better you get. And that as is true with just about anything in life. But it just, with art, even now, it's like, I think if you ever get to a point where you feel real satisfied with your stuff, you're probably starting to suck.
Yeah, you're getting you feel like
you're beginning the slippery slope into mediocrity. And I still hate my own work. Like, you got my background, my artwork as your background, and all I'm doing is like obsessing on what I would fix now.
Yeah. I mean, you got to keep the horn for Matador. I mean, the cigar.
I love that you got Manicorn's horn coming.
Yeah. I mean, I positioned it perfectly for that.
It really worked.
So, I mean, this is probably a good segue into the boys. I mean, do you look at the boys and say, oh, I could have done these better? Because like the boys is okay.
That had a lot to do with like where I was in my career at the time. I had been angrily almost just begging to ink my own work because the people that I grew up really admiring, my favorite artist of all time, like top of the heap, is Brian Bolland. Like, I think Brian Bolland is just, he just encapsulates everything I want my work to look like. And and so it's like me being really bad at trying to draw like Brian Bolland is where my style came from.
Okay.
I can't do what he does, and yet it's like a magic trick that I keep trying to solve. Like, well, how does he get that rabbit in the head? That's what his line work looks like to me. But but then there's also like Dave Stevens and, like I said, Neil Adams and Dave Mazzucchelli, who has a completely different style than those guys. And then I get around to like how much I love Art Adams and Mike Mignola and Adam Hughes and Kevin McGuire. These people who and I think what they all have in common is they all know how to make their characters emote, and they're excellent storytellers. And ultimately, I think what I really want from my own work is that. Like, I think it's more important to tell a good story than draw an awesome picture.
Okay.
If the story grabs you and your image is good, you're completely immersed in that moment in a comic. So with the boys, I wanted to ink my own work. And the main reason I wanted to ink my own work, not to throw shade on any of the inkers that have worked with me, and because Transmetropolitan would not be what it is if it weren't for Rodney Ramos and his ability to keep up with the deadlines the way we had to, because I couldn't have done it. We'd have these gaps in time where I could have been inking my own stuff, and I would just work on other projects while I was waiting for more script. But so Rodney kind of defines that look for that book. But I did the covers. I was inking my own covers. And the more I was inking my own stuff, the more I recognized that there's a disappointment when you get something back from an inker and it doesn't look like what you wanted it to. And that's not their fault, because you're working as a team.
Right.
There's going to be their influence in what they wanted, what they thought it should look like has to be accommodated as well. But for myself, like, I started to think about all the, like I said, the artists that ink their own work that I love so much, and realized that that's where I needed to become a better inker. I got way too comfortable being a penciler. And so I kept pushing and pushing. So The Boys was the first opportunity I had. So going into the book, I said, I want to ink this myself. So I see the early issues and the pressure I was under to keep the book coming out without wanting to let go of that piece of it. Like, I wanted to have a complete look for that book. Right. And so the early days of my inking really shows. But
so that's
it kind of brought an energy and a grit to it that I think was necessary.
And I mean, now your characters are come to life, and that's got to be. That's congrats on 2 seasons. That's got to be. So
cool. That's great. Yeah, we're going into season. They're just starting to film season 3 because with COVID, it's been delayed, but they're finding a way. So I'm very excited about the show. The show has been mind blowing in that I remember. Well, it took 10 years before anything actually happened. They started out. They optioned us back in 2008. And then it just kind of bounced around and had a bunch of different people attached to it. At one point, Adam McKay was going to make a trilogy out of it. And I saw some of the stuff he was doing. He and I got to be friends, and just great. It would have been awesome, but it wouldn't have been what it is on TV. So, because I think they were afraid of it. It was around the time Iron Man from Marvel Studios had just come out. So people were just starting to realize what superhero films could be.
Right.
So, the idea that we would have waltzed in with The Boys and then turned everything on its head. Everybody was afraid of it. They were afraid of it as a comic book. We got canceled, even though it was selling like crazy. And then they optioned a movie, and they never made the movie. So if it weren't for Seth Rogen and definitely Eric Kripke, loving the comics and really wanting this thing to come to life, I probably would still be in limbo. So really, hats off to them. But they show so much love for the property that you can see in the show how much they love the comic, even though they're doing their own thing with it. And I absolutely love the cast. Like, everybody's just, as people, they're super nice. I've been on set a couple of times and met
cool.
And they're just nice people in general, and they all get along, and it's really kind of a beautiful thing to watch it come together behind the scenes. But then when you see him on screen, it's just the whole property has been elevated by the show in a way that you can still go read the comics and enjoy the comics for what they are. It doesn't detract from the comics in any way, but they're definitely doing their own thing with all the right elements, like all the right notes are getting hit. Homelander is much more complex and interesting than he was in our comic. But that had a lot to do with the focus of the comic was always more on Butcher and the characters that were fighting them. The Seven were sort of analogous. Is that the right word? They were kind of vague. You didn't really know what was going on in Homelander's private life like you do on the show. But by making them more complex on the show, I think they're more interesting characters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we always refer to like any of these shows, from The Boys to Preacher to Walking Dead. Like it's kind of like an Earth 2 version of what you guys did, and I actually prefer that as to like the old comic book thing used to be like, well, it's not like the comics, and like that was a bad thing, and now I think it's a good thing because I get to enjoy something like The Boys, even though I read the entire series and I know that series very well, and still get surprised by it.
Right. Yeah, and that's the nice thing is, I mean, same here. I mean, I'm watching it as I'm somewhat of just an audience member myself. I read the scripts before they start shooting sometimes, but even when I'm reading it, I remember reading the dolphin scene from season 1.
God.
And I remember when I was reading it, I'm like, this isn't going to work. I thought it was going to look stupid. And I was like, God, I think they're kind of going too far here. I think the joke is weak. And, and then I saw it. And it's like, now it's like classic. Like when you think of The Boys, you think of that dolphin go, and it's hilarious on screen and it getting run over. I'm like, oh, but that's what actually made our comic work. Just outrageousness like that.
Right.
But the Deep is such a totally unique character to the show that when I was reading that, I didn't know what Chase was going to be like in the role. I didn't know there'd be music involved. The whole thing had to come to life for me just as much as anybody else in the audience. But once I saw it realized, I'm like so glad I don't have a say over such things, because I probably would have like, no, don't do that. That would have been a bad call. So Kripke knows what he's doing, and that's why it's awesome. They're very respectful of me and the property, and have been nothing but kind to me as well. So it's been a really good, positive experience.
So you've said a few things about the show, but like, do you have any in-depth involvement with it?
With the television show?
Yes.
Yeah, my artwork is all over it. I mean, they've hired me. They hired me to do artwork for both seasons. Okay. So the first thing you see at the very inception of the very first moment of the show is a cover of the Seven, and it becomes kind of like that, faux Marvel opening, but it comes the Vought logo. But for a brief second, you see this cover of the Seven. That's my artwork. So the very first thing you see at all for The Boys is an original piece I did for the show. And they got my stuff on covers and posters. In Huey's bedroom, there's original posters that I did for the show. And then the headquarters, like when you're in the Seven headquarters, there's all this artwork on the walls. Like that's artwork they hired me to do for the show in season 1. And then in season 2, episode 3, there's a whole sequence where there's a guy pitching a movie to the Seven about the dawn of the Seven, and there's storyboards there. Like those are they hired me to do those storyboards. So my art was like featured for a few minutes in episode 3. It's just cool that way. They had me do like 25 of them, and they only used like 7. Oh. It was crazy because I was like, oh, they didn't even use the good ones.
That's a lot of work. But like you said, I mean, the adaptation of the story and stuff, I think it fits more for this, where we are today, in 2021, but 2020 when we were watching. But
it's uncannily timing. I mean, it's timely in a way that I couldn't even imagine when season 2 came out. I'm like, God, it's like they knew in the future where things were going.
Yeah, where we would be. And
so it hit like it's just remarkably timely. And I think that's part of the reason it's doing so well. Right. Because I didn't expect that either. I was like just hoping we wouldn't get canceled right away.
Right.
Because the Tick had just been canceled, and I was like, oh, it's a pretty good show. I'm surprised the Tick is gone. Yeah. But then, so I had all these like early fears that, is it going to, not find its audience, or is it going to be one of those shows you're like, oh, did they ever make that adaptation? And instead it's been like,
Well, I can tell you it's it's successful, but how I knew it was successful was when my father called me and was just like, did you watch the new season of The Boys?
Right.
It's funny because my wife is like nothing like me as far as the geek stuff goes. She's not into comics, sci-fi, any of that stuff. She likes, murder dramas and CSI and stuff like that.
Right.
And then but she when she was into it, when we saw the rough cut of the pilot and she was excited to see the next one, I knew something was clicking because she was like that about Game of Thrones, where she wasn't as into sci-fi or Lord of the Rings like I am,
right?
Fantasy stuff, but she loved Game of Thrones because of the complexity and the drama and the politics and all of that made that show amazing. And so when I saw her react that way to The Boys, I was like, I think it might be something, and I thought it was great too. Having, like that experience of having read it and then seeing it come together was pretty cool.
And the change of the Deep, I think, was the most shocking at first, but he steals like every scene. Because in the comic, he's just big, lunky, and it doesn't.
Yeah, he was my least favorite character to draw in the comic too.
Really? Oh, okay.
Because you couldn't make him emote. Had, and that helmet was a pain in the ass to draw. And then and it was funny. I loved what Ennis was thinking when we wanted him to purposely be kind of stupid. Like I gave him a cape because it's like he's an underwater dude with a cape.
Why would you need a cape?
This is the dumbest thing ever, right? So we wanted him to be, we weren't just trying to take the piss out of DC characters. We were trying to like take archetypes and turn them on their head. And and Ennis finds that whole like the costume thing about characters kind of stupid,
right? Because
his influences were like 2000 AD and war comics and things like that. And when he was growing up, he didn't have the same affection for the DCU or the Marvel U that I did because those characters were like my childhood playthings.
Yeah.
And so, so when it came time to, create the seven, I wasn't, they're clearly their archetypes, but again, I wanted to create characters that would give you the feels, but the DCU characters would hate the seven. They would never do the things the seven do. Like Superman and Homelander would have words.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Because Superman would never do the things Homelander does. And when it came to the Deep, they actually, I liked what they did on the show because they sort of took Jack from Jupiter and melded him with the Deep. And so they sort of got a new character by combining the personalities of two of ours. And I like that they made him sort of like a consequential response to the things that happen in the story. But at the same time, there's that shot in season 1 where he exposes himself to Starlight. Like that's like a mirror of my panel.
Right.
But it was Homelander in the comic, as
right.
you probably remember. So it was interesting that they took it so there could be a character that had to suffer consequences, and they made Homelander more of a mystery and anomaly. He kind of stays above it, but then you realize he's as messed up as the rest of them.
Yeah, for sure.
So you don't have to go too much in depth with this, but I've just heard this story like third hand so many times. I would love to hear your side of it. The first issue of that book was published by DC and then got moved to a different publisher.
First 6, yeah.
Oh, the first 6 did. The story I've heard is a little outlandish. Like, was it really you guys kind of snuck it in there and then someone finally realized like what the hell's going on?
We didn't sneak anything. That's the irony of it all. We actually were very open and proud of it. We literally said in the pitch, Garth wrote, I want to out preach a preacher. So that was on the pitch. So, and then when we were promoting it, that quote was on the poster that DC put out, Wildstorm put out. But we were over at Wildstorm, which was not DC proper. It was this image company that Jim Lee had created that DC had taken over. And it kind of got put into the umbrella of DC Comics. So all of our paper that they would send the artist would have 3 logos in the corner: DC, Vertigo, and Wildstorm. And so Wildstorm was sort of its own entity, and we were, and in the spirit of Image Comics, it's a creator-owned title, The Boys. And so we were going to go over there and do our thing, and we had everybody's blessing. They were excited to have us, and we were prepared to, kick ass and take names. That's what we wanted to do with that series. We weren't shy about it. But what happened is, like, somewhere in the midst of it, people higher up at DC were a little bit shocked at how far we had gone. But it wasn't the editorial. I mean, it went all the way to the publisher at Wildstorm at the time that they were thrilled. It was selling like crazy. It wasn't like it was this secret book. It was a hit.
Right.
So it was weird for me because like I always thought growing up and that if you do something really cool and it's a hit, people like reward you and pat you on the back and go, good job.
Right.
Here's some more rewards. You've done it. No, in my life, it's always been like, this is awesome. Go away.
The opposite of that. What the hell?
And so what happened is like, but I sympathized in the regard that, okay, the left hand wasn't talking to the right hand, I guess, because what ultimately had happened was, you'd be reading through issue 1 and, there's Homeland or issue 3, like there's Homelander exposing himself to Starlight or Butcher and Raynor having grudge sex, and then next to it is like an ad for Justice League or Batman, and which I had also drawn at one time or another too. So, my style's on those characters somewhere as well. I could appreciate the cringe. But they were really great about it. This is the thing where they could have made our lives a nightmare, and they didn't at all. Like DC was actually super classy about it. They just determined that one of two things had to happen. Either we were going to move it and tone it down. They had done something similar with the Authority. And so it was either going to get moved and toned down, or we could take it somewhere else, but they didn't want that under their banner. And so we opted to take it to Dynamite. Ultimately, we got a lot of offers when it got canceled, but we ended up at Dynamite. But that was who let us do whatever we wanted. They had zero. Nick Barucci was a big fan of what we were doing at Wildstorm. He's like, no, come over here and just do whatever you want. Yeah. And so they did, and we did. But no, that's the way it ended up working out. It was just a weird Friday for me because, like, again, the book was successful, and I had everything lined up for, like, we were going to do this 5-year run. And I hadn't taken any other work. I was going to focus solely on that. I was very happy with the situation. I had an exclusive contract with DC at the time just to do The Boys. So the day it got canceled, I'm like, what am I going to do? I had no other work lined up. I wasn't, I was going to do this. And so, it was a weird Friday. But by Monday, everything was back on top.
And I mean, it going to Dynamite, it had to be the way it was for the story. And I think it says something about it being at Amazon too, because, like, it seems like they can get away with a lot more. It just works with the story,
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's one of the great things about it being on a streaming network rather than a commercial network is we don't have advertisers getting the same willies that DC got once upon a time. And, there's people that until it's happening, they can't imagine it working. Right. It's like, it's but including myself, like I was telling you about, like that dolphin scene. Until I saw it, I was like, I
mean, even the opening scene with Huey and his girlfriend, it was, they announced it. I'm like, how the hell is this gonna, like, people are gonna, the first 10 minutes, it's like, that, and it was like, that was like panel to panel, right? I mean,
practically. I mean, actually, that's a good point. When I met Kripke, when the show was just getting going, we sat down in San Diego, and he was so cool that the first question he asked me was, how do you see the show? What do you want it to look like? And I was like, I can't believe I'm being asked, thank you. And so we talked for a while, and I said, it's got to be funny. If it's not funny, it's just going to be a long, hard slog. Right. So, the part of what makes that book work is it's outrageously funny at points, and he agreed. And then I said, and you really please tell me you're going to have the scene where Huey's holding the arms. And he was like, I wasn't sure about that. And then we talked about it. And I said, no, because that's where you connect with Huey. And if you don't have that launch point, I don't think that, the fans of the comic are going to go, oh, you guys get it. If you see that, they've read the comic. Right. And the other part is that's why you care about Huey. That's why Huey, because that's his loss, that experiences with the audience. And then the way they did it in the show, like, they made it their own thing. Like, it's not the way it happened in the comic exactly. Right. But they had a much more interesting story arc because of that takeoff point. And then Jack Quaid just kills it. He's just so great in that scene. Oh, yeah. But what I really loved is how this is how comics and film really differ, is that Dan Trachtenberg, the director, it was his idea to slow it way down and then have that all happening in this weird slow-mo. Now, if I did that in the comic that way, it would have been 2 pages of like 9-panel grid.
Right. It doesn't work.
Because I would have had to show, the wave on his face and then a little blood hitting, and then, 4 panels later, a lot of blood hitting, and then the reveal.
Right. Yeah.
But in the comic, it's just like, boom, what just happened? And it's just, you're just shocked. And in a comic, you can stay on that panel as long as you want before moving on. You can sit there and absorb all the detail that I put into the carnival background and the dripping blood and all that, and then decide when you're going to turn the page. But you don't get to do that in a film unless you really are obsessive with the remote. The director decides when you see and what you see. And so when they do that reveal in the show of that cloud of just guts and bone, which is just amazing. And I saw that in the rough cut. It was brown and these weird gray blobby objects were in there. And I'm like, what's that going to look like? And then when you see it in finished, it's like, mwah.
It looks amazing.
That's amazing. You could, but that's the thing that, but then it moves on. You got Jack screaming,
holding
Robin, and then you breaks your heart. And, but then you're into another scene all of a sudden. So that's where the magic is happening between what we did and what they're doing, but you can see the harmony. And I really love that it is, like I said, the fact that Kripke even sat down with me and asked me what I wanted the show to look like or be like, was a huge thing. He did the same with Ennis. And like, it's been really gratifying. I think that because a lot of times I think, you see adaptations and the creators' names are nowhere near it. And especially back in the 90s when they were adapting Marvel stuff, like, to go from like, I don't know if you ever saw the old Captain America film from the 90s where Red Skull's Italian.
Yes.
Those mean Italians. And the Red Skull, Red Skull's Italian, and then throughout the whole thing, and the theme song is an acoustic guitar, rather than this was Captain America. And like, take me home, country roads.
How do you not have a metal
rubber ears?
Yeah. Oh my god.
You can't cut a hole in a mask.
Oh god.
So, and then he runs around the whole film with his cowl down and a big jacket over it, like he's ashamed of the costume.
Right.
You look at the 3 Captain America movies they made recently with Chris Evans, and you're just like, there you go. Yeah. That's Captain America. He's doing amazing. Even when the cowl's down, he's Cap. Yeah, but he'll put the cowl on at least, for a good portion of the movie. That's not like he's ashamed to be that superhero. And as a fan, you want that. You don't want to see a guy in a jacket. Whole time.
And just a little more on the boys before we talk about some comic stuff. But what I really loved about the boys was where we got into the C-list heroes, where it was like, the boys taking on the like street level people and them doing bad stuff. And I hopefully we get to see a little more of that in the show next season. I'm hoping, but that was always my like, oh, what hero or villain are we going to see today? You know what I mean? Like that like pops up. And that was always like my favorite part of like, what ridiculous person are we going to see? So
well, I can't say too much about what I do know. And there's a lot that I still don't know, but I can say what Eric Kripke's been tweeting. So I know that Herogasm is going to be part of season 3.
Which when I saw that, I was convinced you can roll back the tape to when season 1 came out. I'm like, there's certain things they'll never do. And one of them was Herogasm. And then when I saw that tweet, I'm just like, I couldn't have been more wrong and more happy about it.
He was downright gloating.
Oh my God.
Well, the show's a hit. So it's like, I think as it goes on, unless, I still got my fingers crossed that Tech Knight's going to show up at some point.
Please.
I know he exists in the universe. I did a cover for it in season 1. And I've heard him referenced.
I saw that cover, and I was like, we need a Tech Knight. Yeah, because I remember we talked about that, Chris and I. Like, we need to see this. Oh, my God. I need to see Tech Knight.
Yeah, I think maybe now that like there's probably more budget than there was in season 1. So I like kind of like, I don't know if you ever watched Red Dwarf, but Red Dwarf just gets more and more, as the seasons go on and the show got more popular, the sets got more complex and the photography got better. But his first one looks like kids working out, something in their clubhouse.
2 weeks in a row, a guest mentions Red Dwarf.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So we could do an hour on The Boys. We could do a 2-hour show on Transmet, but we do have to talk about Space Bastards.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the new book coming out. So quick, what's the pitch for that book?
Yeah.
The concept is, it's a weird future or alternate reality where man's greatest goal to make it into space and interplanetary travel and connections with aliens, that's all happened. And now, but the economy is still shit and people are, have to do whatever they can to survive. And so there's a couple billionaires that are at war with each other in that world. And one of them owns the Postal Service, but it's an intergalactic thing now. So the idea is that if you work for the Postal Service, you wear this bracelet and that tracks your deliveries, and it's turned into like a mercenary kind of operation where if you're the first one to deliver the package, you get the big money and the bonuses. And so you can do whatever you got to do to be the one to deliver the package on time and first. And so in that world, you've got these brutal aliens and of all kinds. You've got rogue operators like bounty hunters, and everybody's at each other's throats. So the first arc is called Tooth and Mail, like, just to play on the words. And the center of this story is a guy named Davy Proton, who's kind of an everyman, who just lost his job working for the corporation of one of the big billionaires and is now working as a postal guy for the other billionaire, Roy Sharpton, who's a character and misogynist and borderline racist, and but he's like the two couldn't be more opposite. And then Davy's sort of in the middle, and having worked for the other guy, it ends up becoming a integral part of the first plot. I did a 7-issue arc of over 200 pages, penciled and inked. It's one of the largest penciled and inked artworks I've done in a long time, probably since The Boys. And but I finished it back in 2019. So everything coming out now is work that I did a while ago. You might even notice on the cover that is the artwork behind Michael. There is my tag. It's dated 2014 because originally Eric Peterson and Joe Aubrey brought me on board just to do covers for their Kickstarter. And that's actually one of the original covers that I did. But there's another version of it that has their design of Manicorn. And but they liked the covers I did so much that they kind of came at me and say, hey, the project is funded through Kickstarter. We can hire you. We'd love you to come in and work on this. Yeah. And then the conversation evolved into where like I would be a co-creator, and I would go in and I said, well, I want to, redesign all your characters and, make it this world. I know what this could be. And they were like, yes, we want that. And so we ended up becoming good friends and had a blast working on the book together, because it's such a nutty idea and they're both hilarious. Like if you ever get a chance to talk to these guys at Comic-Con, if there's a world where we get Comic-Cons and get to talk to each other,
we're hoping
they're really great. They've had a booth there for a few years. We were trying to get the word out. When I was just working on they put out an ash can and set up at San Diego with this huge banner and everything. As we tried to get, they wanted to get the word out early on before they found a publisher. But only in this last year they got Humanoids picked it up and is putting it out monthly now, and which is great because I'm old friends with Mark Waid, and that company's a lot of fun to work with. They're doing a great job packaging it, promoting it. But it's kind of weird for me because it's work that it was in my rearview mirror. So when it came back around and people are talking about it, I'm like, oh yeah, Space Bastards. And then I'm just looking at that piece from 2014. Going, oh, Davy's hair is wrong. And
my bad. But yeah, I mean, was it fun for you? I mean, you get to build this world inside. You said you're a huge sci-fi fan, so this has got to be
it's
right.
it's sort of like my Star Wars. I'm a huge Star Wars nerd.
Oh
like
boy, Chris.
Behind this sheet is like a ridiculous amount of Star Wars merchandise.
Oh, that's awesome.
You can't see it, but I'm looking at Star Wars figures in front of me right now. Like they're
Chris's
all around
room.
me. I love Star Wars. But what I realized a long time ago is what I really love about Star Wars is not so much the characters and the actors. It's I really loved Ralph McQuarrie's designs. And so that world felt so tangible and mechanical that I love that. I love that, like when you see like a snow speeder coming over the hill in Empire Strikes Back, like it's missing a panel and you could see the pipes and the things. Because my dad was an airline mechanic and a general mechanic. He was a lead mechanic out at United Airlines for years, and till he retired. And he was always underneath the hood of a car or underneath one of those little, boards with the wheels so you could get under a car. So like that is to me as much a part of my childhood as Star Wars was. So those two things really come together in my head when I think about the mechanics of the world. I wanted to build a world like that, and this story fit it perfectly. Like the spaceships, they would all have their own personalities. It was, like my idea to I got a horse skull reference, and then I made Manicorn's ship look like a horse skull.
Yeah, that's
things like that, because they just said, "Oh, it's got to be massive," and I wanted. But Manicorn is such a character. It's like I figured he'd have like a tricked out version of his spaceship. All his money would make his ship look as badass as possible. And it's like there's a branding that goes on in that world. These are things that I kind of brought to it, like where I got in their heads and started. And like Manicorn should be an alien rather than, because originally he was just a human like Davey. And I said, no, he should be an alien and just like, a little bit like the kind of guy that would hang out with Lobo on some shitty dive bar on some weird planet that Lobo would have a stopover on. They would arm wrestle and buy each other shots. But that's the I wanted that world to kind of have that tangibility. I wanted it to smell and feel greasy and like a little bit gross, because the characters are all a little bit gross. Even Davey, like, even though he's like sort of the protagonist in it, like I don't know if I like him. Like, I kind of like seeing him get his ass kicked,
Right.
And I enjoy drawing that stuff. But that's kind of the joy of that world to me, is that it's a Looney Tunes kind of a world where anything goes. And those are my favorite worlds to create within, especially if I'm designing it myself, because that's what I loved about Transmetropolitan was anything I thought of fit in that world. I could have a stream of consciousness while I drew that book, and it all worked. And that's kind of, I think, the joy of that book when you go back and look at it, is there's so many little Easter eggs that was just my stream of consciousness filling up the world, that it has that weird kind of energy to it. Warren knew exactly what he wanted and would tell me, like, in scripts, like, okay, let's do this whole issue with like horizontal panels. Like every page should be like, like a splash page with text on it. And that's going to be a whole issue. And then it was really fun to work with that, because he'd write with that in mind, but then also he trusted me. So anything I would do with it, I could take his piece and then bring my own to it. And that's kind of what Space Bastards was like, is that there's no wrong in that world, because the character behind the wheel or behind the gun could be an alien or, male, female, didn't matter. It's like it all fits in that world.
Well, that's what drew me when I read it, was like, I could definitely tell it was a Darick Robertson book because of the world and the feel of everything, and just like, the blood too. But I mean, just everything in there. I'm just like, this is the same guy that I've read through The Boys, through Transmet, through all the other stuff that you've done throughout your career, but especially the indie stuff. I can really tell when it was you. And I remember when that email first came up and I got the preview for it, I'm just like, the image came up first. I'm like, that's a Darick Robertson cover. Like, what's going on? And then I read the thing. I was like, he's actually drawing the book. And then when I actually got my hands on it and read it, it's like, it's really cool to see like that. I could tell you had some part in building this story in some way. And I think it's really great they did that, because it comes off on the page, especially as a comic fan.
Well, I really liked Joe and Eric, and I thought I could see the merit of their idea long before I got involved in it. So for me, I had a lot of time to gestate on, especially when I worked on these covers. Like, I had a long time to gestate on what I would do with it. I just didn't see that as something that was going to happen, but it came together to be something that I'm proud of co-created. They had such a clear vision for what they want that world to be, and have had that for so many years. Because this is like my first comic ever was a thing called Space Beaver, and it was a black and white funny animal book with the idea that it was supposed to be funny. Nobody was in on the joke, unfortunately. I was only 17. I really didn't know how to get people in on the joke. I was just sort of creating this world of cute animals that if they got in a laser fight, their brains would fly out and guts would explode. Because that's been a part of me since I was. That still makes me laugh. I don't know why, but that's sort of where my sensibilities were. And so this world kind of fits right in with that, where this is also, Eric Peterson, Davy Proton was the thing he doodled in middle school. And then ended up, like, when he went to film school, he ended up making like films about him and short films. And ultimately they wrote a screenplay, and then they realized it would work as a comic. And so this has been a long road for him and Joe Aubrey, who they've been friends for 15 years. And we used to help him on those short films, and then got involved, and they started writing these stories together. So their passion for it is really infectious. And so, but for me, it's like, I could see why it's funny and why my style would fit it. But more than anything, it's like, it's to me, it's a Looney Tunes world where nobody really could survive the things these guys go through. Davy is weirdly indestructible in a way most people wouldn't be. And that's why, and Manicorn also, because he's got quite the story arc coming. But that's why I was like, he should be an alien, because nobody would buy that a human being could go through and survive what Manicorn goes through.
Right. He looks tough enough to survive all that shit, for sure.
Exactly. And then when you see what happens to him in future issues, you'll understand. We should talk when issue 7 comes out.
Oh yeah. I'd love that.
So is this book going to be done in a series of miniseries, or are we expecting an ongoing with this?
I think they'd like to keep it going. I don't know exactly what the long-term plans for it are. I mean, I think it comes down to how it's selling and stuff, but they've got a lot of material that when I finished my arc and went on to other things, they were hiring some amazing artists. Speaking of Lobo, Simon Bisley did an arc and was doing pieces. And so they've got Colin McNeil, I think, and Boo. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on his last name. But a lot of really talented guys came in and worked with my designs and have created artwork for the book. So they've got a plethora of stuff that they've funded through Kickstarter, and Humanoids is releasing. So I don't know how long they intend to keep it going, but I think in a perfect world, they want it to just keep going until somebody pulls the plug on it, or they can't sell another copy, because it's a passion project for them. And like I said, that's infectious. I'd like to see a world where I go back and revisit those characters too. I did a Virgin variant cover for #1. Virgin meaning there's no logo or anything on it, and redrawing that cast in 2020 after having not worked on them for a long time was like visiting old friends. Like, oh, I love these characters. Like they're a little piece of me in them. So.
So it looks like the Kickstarter for Volume 2 is up, everybody, right now. You can go and get collections of Volume 1 as well as some other goodies. But it looks like Colin McNeil is doing the art for Volume 2.
Yep.
So, which his art is pretty amazing as well.
Yeah, he's a talented guy. Everybody on there, it's like, you did great work. Like I said, and I love Simon Bisley's stuff, though. Seeing Simon Bisley do a piece of Manicorn was like sort of a weird meta moment where I'm like, I was thinking Lobo.
Yeah.
I was looking at your stuff. Now you're looking at my stuff.
That's awesome. Issue 2 comes out, let's see, February 10th. But I was looking at the cover for issue 4 because the character looks ridiculous with the roses.
Zordak?
Yeah, Zordak with the roses.
Is that the one with him with the roses?
Yeah, the roses.
Yeah, Zordak's my favorite character of them all. You haven't met him yet.
Yeah.
But he's amazingly interesting and fun character. And I fell in love with drawing him. Like, if I have a favorite, or if I get a chance, if I go back and work on this, I want to do a very Zordak centric story, because he's just such a. I don't want to spoil it because there's some surprises with his personality and the way things go, but he's definitely a character. I love him the most.
They only show you the cover for 4. It's like 1 and 4, and I'm like, that I need to see that issue now.
Yeah. The name of that story is Zordak Goes on a Date.
Oh god,
that's fantastic.
Zordak is like, he's a perv. He's like he's a complete pervert.
Okay. That would all make sense.
But he doesn't know that he's a pervert.
The best kind. There you go.
It's just sex obsessed. It's fun. I don't want to spoil too much.
That's awesome. And then for comics, we have Hellblazer Rise and Fall coming out next week.
Yeah.
The final issue, right?
Yeah, I'm missing that too. I just finished that in December.
Yeah. So do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, please.
That story arc? Yeah.
It was my first time drawing John Constantine ongoing, and it was really funny because Tom and I did a 7-page sequence for one of his issues of Deceased.
Yep.
He was like Die Another Day or something like that, and it was really great just working on Constantine. But like when it came out, we got a review that said I was like an iconic Constantine artist or something like that, and we were laughing because I had never drawn the character before. Like, I mean, I did it for commissions. I'd always get a commission,
right?
Or somebody would want Constantine and Spider Jerusalem together or something like that. but I'd never actually been published drawing him before I drew him in Deceased.
Right.
And so like the fact that I arrived as iconic was like, well, that's pretty good. I guess I got a knack for a character I've never drawn before. But I mean, obviously he fits my wheelhouse. He's smoking, he's dirty, and you can smell him from the page. But I ended up having but then we ended up pitching this Hellblazer Rise and Fall to the Black Label, and they foolishly said yes. And so Tom and I ended up doing each issue is 44 pages, so it ended up being like a real investment of time. But I haven't had as good a collaboration as I had with Tom in a long time. Like Tom and I we get each other anyway. We were friends before we worked together, and had wanted to work together on something for quite a while. So that Deceased was just kind of like kind of wet the palate and sort of like ended up being an audition for a longer series. So this is going to be the 3rd issue of a 3-issue arc, but it's over like 132 pages in the end. And it's great. It's just Tom's got an incredible knack for Constantine's dialogue and a great sense of humor. Like his jokes land so well, and I can just, and when I'm reading the scripts, it just comes to life for me. So it's almost like I'm drawing this world I can see as opposed to having to imagine. And it's a fun arc. It's a story about greed. It's a story about billionaires trying to redeem their souls. It's very much a Constantine story where he's, taking on demons, and there's possession and sort of a mystery to unravel, and childhood guilt, and it's really good stuff. I mean, he really, and I got to draw John as a 9-year-old, which was fun, or 11-year-old.
11-year-old, yeah.
Just drawing young John Constantine with a cigarette hanging out of his mouth.
Perfect. That's amazing.
And Tom's one of those guys. He's been on my list for, I mean, how long have we been doing the show, Mike? 5 years now? 6 years?
Lost count, yeah.
But he's been on my list since the beginning as one of those guys that, like, he's going to break out soon. Like, everybody's going to know the name Tom Taylor.
Yeah.
And he keeps making great stuff, but I don't know what it is, but when you talk to the general comic book public, they still don't know the name.
Yeah. I think he's Tom King.
Yeah.
He and Tom King have a funny thing going on Twitter where they post pictures of themselves as the other.
Yeah, right.
And Tom just wrote, like, my name being misspelled. Like, I had 30 years in this business, and people only know me mostly through my printed name. And yet I'll get an extra R in my name in press releases, or I'm Darren Robinson, it's like, and I go like, well, what else do I gotta do to like? I thought Bill Sienkiewicz was getting like, getting a pass, but he's like, oh no, my name's been butchered so much.
Oh man,
So with Tom Taylor, it's like he'll put out a great book, and it'll be this week's #1, Deceased by Tom King.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So in that book, it's a Black Label book, correct? Mm-hmm. So you guys aren't beaten down by continuity or anything. You can just kind of do whatever you want to do.
That is the joy of creating the Black Label, is that we could do a standalone story that didn't require it being. It's like it needs to be canon, but it doesn't have to be in continuity. It can happen at any point in the character's life and kind of stand alone on that, because it's really a platform for creators of a certain level of career to kind of go in and do a passion project. So luckily I made the cut. So awesome. But it was really fun because I penciled and inked it. My inking got better on just working on that alone because I had time, and the editorial was really, Andy Coury was just great to work with on that, and gave me a lot of room, but yet, was paying attention, which is the best combination, like enjoying it, but yet, giving his input and feedback where it was necessary. So, and then Tom is just a joy to collaborate with. So.
Awesome.
And the printed version of that, do you know if it's in one of the oversized versions?
Yeah, it's like magazine style.
Yeah,
I love those for the Black Label.
Oh yeah, like it's like Heavy Metal is the same size.
Yeah.
I love that too, and the printing on it is just gorgeous. They're really nice books to own. And then I had to work at a different scale than I'd ever worked at before because the page dimensions are different. So really? I normally work on 11 by 17 Bristol board, and so I was working on a contracted version, like kind of a square shaped parameters, which made my layouts more challenging and different. But then as I got the hang of it, I kind of fell in love with it, because what's really fun about the Black Label book is it's printed almost like at 1:1. So what you're seeing on the page is like pretty much what it looked like under my hand. Okay. Whereas with the normal 11 by 17, they shoot it down. Right. So everything is drawn at this size, but then you're reading it at this size. Mm-hmm. Whereas with the Black Label, it's like, it's almost printed the size that I drew it. So that's kind of fun. And it brings the, exposes me a little bit more than I'm comfortable with, but where I had to cut corners. But
do you feel
I have to remember they're comics, they're not movies,
right? Do you feel like the scale is almost, because you must have almost like a muscle memory for scaling, doing 11 by 17? Does it throw you off a little bit when you're doing that? Or
yeah, I did in the beginning, but I got used to it. I mean, because ultimately I realized I was drawing it at 1:1. It's what I was drawing was going to be on the page the way I was drawing it, and then that kind of became great, because then I was like, oh, I will take the time to do the detail on this palm of this character's hand, or this little guy in the background, because I knew that it would, that when you're reading it, it would come through. So.
Okay, very cool.
It's awesome.
Well, I'm hoping to do more in that format.
Yeah.
I hope they keep doing more in that format, because just the art pops so much more in that. There was one book they did, Three Jokers, where I was reading it, and our feelings of the book aside, we love the art in it. And we're just like, I really wish this was one of those giant magazine style, because was it Jason Fabok that did the art?
Fabok, yep. Mm-hmm.
His art was fantastic, and I was like, I just want to get a big version of it and just really look into it.
Right.
Yeah, it's an interesting. I like it. I have an unannounced project that I'm writing and drawing that will be out later this year. I can't say what it is yet because it's not announced, but I'm going to be working in that format again. So
awesome.
So I'm happy about that. I really liked working on Black Label stuff, because I hope that there's opportunities for me to do more in that sort of self-contained story universe with creators that I want to work with.
Right. And I think
Tom and I are going to be working together again somewhere down the road soon.
Awesome. That's what I want to hear.
We really had a lot of fun. So this is that. So when you see issue 3 of Hellblazer: Rise and Fall, it's a real labor of love.
Okay. Really
awesome.
Cool.
Yeah. That's one I'm definitely going to pick up soon.
Yep. Yeah. Well, Darick,
so other than my last big question for you, because out of everything you've ever written, or everything ever drawn, I should say, there's one book I have not been able to read, and it's because it's not being printed currently that I'm aware of. Is there any plans to print Space Beaver?
Oh, yeah. Every once in a while I get those questions. It's funny because years ago, my friend Larry Young, who ran a publishing company called AIT, he and I would drink, and at least 2 drinks in, the conversation would have, well, when are you going to do something with Space Beaver? And I'm like, nobody wants to read Space Beaver. I was 17. It's a curiosity piece at best. Yeah. It's not good. I mean, it's like, but you could see the beginnings of what I would become when you look at it. Because again, I was a 16-year-old kid when I thought it up and was just entertaining myself in summer school. But it got my career going, like, as I started going to conventions to promote Space Beaver. But I didn't, and I love him. He's, it's near and dear to me, but it's not. It's almost like a private thing that should have stayed that way. But I just wanted to be published so badly in any capacity that once the guy, Tibor Sardi, saw my work and said, "I'll put this comic out," I was like, "Okay." I didn't know anything about anything, and should have made money that I didn't. But I kept the rights to it. But so I had Larry would come at me and go, "When are you going to do?" I said, "Well, if we put out an omnibus, I'll do the last chapter," because I did 11 issues and it was selling so terribly that I had to just give it up. And I was starting to get work, from bigger publishers, not quite mainstream yet, but better than Space Beaver. And so I just had less and less time for writing and drawing that story. So I just kind of let it go at 11 issues and left on a cliffhanger, which was really not cool.
Yeah.
And because then I get people at conventions that come up like, "Are you ever going to finish Space Beaver? I want to know what happens." And I'd be like, "What's wrong with you?" Like, why do you care? They're, "No, I really love these characters." And like Tess Fowler is like a big fan of Space Beaver. is not ashamed to say so, which I would be. But but that's an example. Like, but I read it when I was a kid and I really liked it. So I've always wanted to kind of go. I went back and finally took Larry at his word, and I drew the final chapter of Space Beaver in 2000. Like 20 years, 21 years ago. God, that went fast. But it's funny because and then he did release it, but he did a 2-volume set, and 1 through 6 sold really decently, and then nobody picked up volume 2 because again, I knew it was going to be that, like, it's a curiosity piece. So I have a dream of putting out an omnibus, but a lot of the original art is just gone. It never came back from the printer because the original publisher didn't pay the bill.
No.
That's how sad and desperate it was. So all my early work, all that original artwork is just probably destroyed in a dumpster somewhere. But I figured I could probably take it and harvest it out of the comics, but the lettering was amateurish because they were just a bunch of guys putting out a comic book. We didn't know. And it was during this black and white boom where the Ninja Turtles had come out and hit it big. And there was like a toy line and the Saturday morning cartoon, and everybody knew who the Ninja Turtles. You've heard of the Ninja Turtles, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Teenage, not specifically the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Oh no.
You've heard of them, right?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So everybody and his brother was trying to recreate that lightning in a bottle in the mid '80s. Yeah. And so there was like black belt radioactive hamsters. And,
that was what came to my mind.
Well, because they were like, "Oh, I get the recipe. Anybody can do this." No, Eastman and Laird thought of something brilliant, and they were just stoned and making themselves laugh. And then, but Kevin Eastman's such a talented artist that, you could not look at those designs and want to read more. But not everybody was that talented, and a lot of people tried, and a lot of people failed. And what happened is it created a false bubble where everybody was buying these black and white comics, thinking that they were going to have a Ninja Turtles number 1 in their collection, or they were going to be the one putting out the next big thing. So the publishers were all on board, and then the retailers were jacking the price up. That's actually the joke on the original Space Beaver. It says $10 comics, and it was originally going to be called $10 already, because the guy Tibor was a comic retailer, and he's like, yeah, they go up in price overnight. It's $1.50 the cover, but now it's $10 already. Yeah. So then it became $10 comics. That's and awesome. The only thing they ever did was Space Beaver. But then the bobble, and as I was saying earlier in the conversation, my career means that I show up at the party and there's an orgy, and just as I get my pants down, the police come in. It's like, oh no! And then I'm getting arrested, and everybody's gone. But that's sort of what happened in the balloon. The balloon exploded in the black and white market, and Space Beaver came out just at the beginning of the end. So it never did any business. It didn't sell very well. Got poor reviews because nobody realized I was just a stupid kid writing and drawing a comic book with no idea what I was doing, and so it just sort of floundered. So the idea that I came back and did this last chapter, and when you're reading through it, it's really funny because like the last issue 11, I think they brought on an inker I didn't want, and it's also typical of my career. And so like it just ends, and then all of a sudden like I've got 10 years plus of professional mainstream experience, and then I'm back drawing Space Beaver. So the art goes, amateur. Whoa, hey! So that last chapter is a lot of fun to read because it was me revisiting my roots and playing with those characters again. And I can't say I didn't enjoy it. It was actually a lot of fun going back because, again, like the world of the Space Bastards, it's something that is in my brain and I created. So it's like I felt a great deal of freedom, drawing Space Beavers, like writing my name.
Right.
So yeah, long way about saying, will we ever collect it? I hope so. But again, it's like, it would take such a big effort to harvest that work from the original comics. And it's a lot of work for no money because I think it's a curiosity piece. If you really want to read it, I would just go on eBay and you probably buy a whole set of them for like $10.
Finally
$10 issues. So I'd like I have this dream sometimes of doing a crowdfunder or a Kickstarter or something to reboot Space Beaver and do another arc. What I'd really like to do is I have this dream. If I actually got a budget for it, I would hire my artist or my favorite writer friends to write a 10-page Space Beaver story with no context. Just write. I'm just, here are the characters, and go. Yeah. And then I would draw it. That's just cool on whatever crazy thing they thought up, like what Space Beaver is or should be. And so each 10-page chapter would have its own flavor and flair, and there'd be no continuity at all. But it would be such a fun read. I think that would be just like a party game. Yeah. So that's a dream. Maybe somewhere down the road, I'll when I'm not busy with things like Hellblazer, I'll crowdfunding a Space Beaver project, or if the Boys has been a great experience, but I'm nowhere near retirement. But if ever, if the merchandise money comes in and I don't have to chase a monthly paycheck again, I'll maybe Space Beaver will make it back onto the board.
Those projects are always fun to me because, someone that Mike and I both really like, Robert Kirkman, and he did Battle Pope before he ever hit it big with Invincible and Walking Dead. And it's like, Battle Pope isn't the greatest book ever, but it's just fun because that was, like you said, one of Kirkman's first, do whatever you want. What do you want to do? Hey, I just want to do a guy in space who wears a Pope hat and kills people. Okay. Yeah. And it's just fun to see, that guy wrote Invincible.
Yeah.
So that's why I like those early works.
Kirkman's a lot more prolific.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Yeah, I know it's those projects are. I mean, it's always a curiosity piece, more than anything. I don't think that anybody really wants to know what happens to Space Beaver. They're just probably curious about what my early art looked like and what a shitty writer I was.
No, that can't be it. Maybe a little. Awesome. Well, Darick, thank you so much for doing the show.
My pleasure. It was great talking to you guys. It was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me.
If we want to send our listeners to follow you, just send them right to your website, or
I have a website, DarickRobertson.com. You can get original art there and read my history about who I am and where I came from and all the stuff that I don't want to talk about anymore. It's put on a website.
Right.
Yeah, and then also I'm on Twitter, but I tend to bitch about politics.
Awesome. Yeah, we could do that off recording if you want. I'm
there's a little bit of Spider Jerusalem in me, so
there you go.
It wasn't all just Warren. Warren woke me up, and I've never gone back to sleep. So.
Oh no.
So yeah, everybody go and check out Darick's work. I mean, if you haven't already, I don't know what you're doing if you haven't read this work, but go there. I'll have the link down below for the Kickstarter for Volume 2 of Space Bastards. We can get some cool Volume 1 stuff as well. And thanks so much for being on, Darick, and hopefully we can do it again. Maybe someday we'll just do a whole 2 hour on Transmet, because I'm sure I could do it. I don't know about Mike.
Yeah, I mean, I need an energy drink, but I could do it.